If only dating sites worked like Raid. Find your perfect partner and do 30% more damage. Hello, everyone. Bront CatHerder here. We're having some fun talking Raid Shadow Legends, and today we're going to be talking about Cupidus. Cupidus is a very versatile and amazing champion. He also has a partner champ with him and Venus. It's one of the better power couples in the game, but overall, Cupidus has got a lot of good utility even without the partner. Amusingly, I actually pulled Venuses. I pulled two Venuses before I pulled my Cupidus. You know, RNG is kind of weird. I've been using Cupidus ever since I pulled him in all kinds of areas. I think he's a great champ, and I kind of wanted to go into this focusing on a champion. I could show you guys, show you how to use him a little bit, show you how I use him, as well as suggest other ways that you might be able to use him no matter where you are in the game, even if you don't have Venus. I also want to talk a little bit about one of the Forge Pass sets, because this particular Forge Pass sets really unlocks a lot of Cupidus's potential, but I didn't want to make a full video on, do you want to buy this set? So this is my way of kind of making a compromise with this, and I think that this should be hopefully interesting for you guys to see how to build this champion. So without much further ado, let's dive into Cupidus, what he does, where you can use him, how to build him, and how I use him. So first of all, Cupidus himself is a really, really useful champion. By himself, he does a decent amount of damage. He hits pretty hard. He's not the squishiest attack champion out there. He's got a decent amount of HP. His defense is a little low. He's actually pretty fast, which is kind of nice. He's got a little bit of base accuracy. Doesn't hurt too bad. His A1 is attacks all enemies and increases damage if the target has any debuffs on them. So that is actually pretty amazing, and you can get up to 20% with the books. And again, with a damage dealer, it's actually worth booking every single bit of their abilities because you want all of these damage bonuses. So hits very hard. It's an AoE, A1, which is always useful, and that's where a lot of his utility comes in. It is an AoE, but it actually hits pretty hard even if he doesn't have Venus on the team. He's got an A2 that attacks all enemies and places burn. It's a 100% chance if you book it. This also hits very hard. It's a little harder than his A1. And of course, burn is a great damage debuff. It's great in Hydra, but it's also great for Doom Tower waves, and some of the Doom Tower bosses. It's overall just a very, very useful ability. You know, if you got a Cupidus, get some accuracy on him for the burns. You don't always have to have accuracy on him if you're doing just pure damage, but accuracy can certainly help you as well. And then finally, he's got a single target attack that he puts an increased attack at himself first, and then he attacks. So he can self-buff. The only problem with this is it's a single target attack, which is nice, but it doesn't do as much damage as some of the AoEs do. It does do more single target damage, and it can put burn on everyone else if you actually kill somebody, and that can't be resisted. So you actually, if he's going to hit really hard and you want him to kill a single enemy, you don't even need the accuracy for him, so you can build him for a ton of damage. Very, very simple kit, lots of AoEs. The A1 AoE makes him very, very utilitarian. However, the punishing partner here, which definitely looks like he's at a different type of dating website than I was expecting, he gives you 25% more damage and always counterattacks when attacks. And again, he's got an A1 that hits really hard, and all he always does is 25%. It's only available when Venus is on the same team, but unlike some partner pairings, Venus doesn't even have to be alive for this to work, which is part of why he is great in some of these arena teams for defenses. He's great in Hydra. He's got all kinds of cool uses. So we'll take a look at some of these uses. And finally, sometimes we ignore these auras, but a 33% attack aura in all battles is useful almost anywhere. So you can use him in Hydra to increase the attack of everybody. You can use him in Arena if you want to increase attack, especially if you don't need the speed for some reason, for some of these Arena teams, or you just want to do some more damage. Great in Centranos for wave clear. Great aura, and a great champion all around. So let's go take a look at some of the stuff we're going to build and talk about some topics on him. First of all, however, I want to talk about the Slayer set. The Slayer set is the current Forge Pass, at least as of recording this video, and it's a great set. It used to be called the Rathlos set as part of the Monster Hunter. It's been renamed Slayer. It is an absolutely amazing set, and I think it's one of the best sets in Raid. It is well worth going for the Forge Pass if you're looking to get additional gear. Now, I think the Forge Pass in general is a great value for the money in Raid, and to be fair, Raid doesn't have a lot of great values, but it saves you energy from having to farm gear. It gives you a gear set that has very limited amounts of times to get it because you have to pay to get it. And since it's a 9-piece set, you need accessories. And some of these accessories you can only get from the paid version or even the free version. But the free version ones are like 5-star rare or 5-star epic, versus the paid ones are going to be your 6-star legendaries. And there's a lot of them you get from the paid version. So going with this set, you get all kinds of cool bonuses. Even a 1-piece or a 2-piece set of this is additional crit rate and crit damage that can be very useful on any nuker. The 3rd piece is plus 5% speed. Again, very useful on any nuker. The 4th set gives you turn meter boost when you're doing AoEs. The 6-piece set ignores 30% defense, and the 9% gives you a chance to repeat the damage from the skill. So if you can get somebody in a 9-piece set of Slayer, they've got a 30% chance of doing double damage on AoE attacks that also fill their turn meter and also ignore 30% of the defense. It's absolutely amazing. It stacks really well. But the other reason that the Forge Pass is really good in general is forging your gear is a great way to advance. I've got a video on that. I'll try to link it up above. And you get a lot of other cool bonuses as well. You get a bunch of cool glyphs. You get a bunch of forge charms that can be very useful for forging. You get some gear in a couple of cases. You just get straight up gear for some of these Forge passes. You also get the 50% boost to silver and to experience. And don't underestimate how much extra silver that can be, particularly if you're farming something like campaign. That's a ton of extra experience. That cuts you need 30% less runs in campaign to get your champions leveled up. That's huge. Or you're going to be leveling up faster in Minotaur, for example. And the plus silver is a huge, huge boost as well. So overall, I really think the Forge Pass is great. But Slayer is absolutely a beast of a set. And with champions that have lots of AoEs or really rely on their AoEs, like your Cupidus, like we're talking about, but also champions like a Wallmaster, you could certainly put something like this on a Skull Crown, or even a Senesha might be an option, or champions that get their AoE quite a bit. I could even see uses for this, even as a non-damage dealer. A 4-piece set on somebody like a Necmo Thar could be great, because that means that Necmo Thar is giving himself a ton of extra turn meter every time he attacks, even if he's not doing the damage that he certainly could do with some of these damage dealers. But that additional turn is spurring everybody on as well. So he's boosting everyone's turn meter more. He's keeping the increased speed up more. There's all kinds of useful things you can do with this set. It's actually a very, very flexible set. So I recommend going for it, and it's definitely going to be core to my build for Cupidus. But we'll talk about ways you can build Cupidus without it as well. So let's go take a look at my Cupidus and talk about building a Cupidus. All right, so these are the stats for my Cupidus in every area. He's got a lot of HP, and he's pretty tanky. Faction Guardians help, Blessings help with that as well. Same with the additional attack, same with the defense. You're going to want to build him with 100% crit rate. You're going to want to get him 200, 220-ish speed seems pretty good. If you're in Nightmare or Hydra, for example, you may want to ramp that speed up a bit. It really depends on where you're using and how much speed you're going to use. But for a generic nuker build like what I've got here, you're going to want to hit the 100% crit rate, get a decent amount of speed, stack as much attack and crit damage as you possibly can. And accuracy is incidental, but not bad. It really depends on how focused you are on landing those burns. In this particular case, I tend to run my Cupidus on my hard team, so the 200 accuracy plus what I get for the area bonuses generally is enough for me to get burns out with him if I need to. So from that end, this is enough accuracy. If I'm doing wave content where I know I need more accuracy, then I might have to lean a little bit more into the accuracy to get those burns if I care about the burns. And that's one of the other things you certainly need to ask yourself. Do you care about the burns and the content you're looking at? In Arena, you may not. In fact, you may not want the burns anyway, because you may not want to get sheeped. If you have a Venus, Venus does the burns as well, so you need the burns a little less often with Cupidus, which is originally why I built him with less accuracy. It turns out he has enough anyway, so it ended up working out. However, if you're going to focus on the burns, particularly if you're not going to put him in a damage dealing build, you're going to want to stack that accuracy up a little bit more. So let's go take a look. I've got mine in 9-piece Slayer. As we mentioned before, 9-piece Slayer is absolutely busted. So we get in Hydra at least, we get 20% extra turn meter on the first hit of each enemy AoE skill. Now, here's the other cool part where this works really well with Cupidus. Cupidus counterattacks. So all of these additional things that he does happen on counterattacks. So he gets attacked, he counterattacks. He fills his turn meter by 20% on the counterattack. He ignores 30% of the enemy's defense, and he has a 30% chance of repeating the damage of the counterattack. It stacks up really well. It's absolutely amazing. And sometimes you got to make compromises getting this here. Like, for example, here, I wish this was a crit damage amulet. If it was a crit damage amulet, I'd have about 27 more crit damage. I'd settle for an attack. Unfortunately, it didn't roll into that, so it's an HP, and I'm settling with it. And that's one of the disadvantages, unfortunately, of the Slayer set, but it's also a reason to buy it, so you can try to get some of this stuff. We got a nice attack banner here, and I actually got an attack ring, so that's all nice. So I didn't have to compromise too much with my build, fortunately, and Ascensions help a ton with this as well. So other things you can do, however, is for Arena, especially if you have a Venus, and a Venus is kind of required for this style of Arena team, because of the counterattacking, you can build him in 6-piece Stone Skin, get 2 turns of basically absolute protection, and every time he's attacked, he'll attack back. He doesn't ignore so much defense because he doesn't have a defense ignore set, but he's still hitting a lot more with the extra 25% damage. You can still build him for a ton of crit rate. Plus, since you don't need the speed, you could ignore speed almost entirely, make him super duper slow, and just keep on letting him attack and counterattack, and effectively the other team will kill itself trying to attack your Cupidus. It's a very fun strategy. It's actually pretty reasonable in defense. There are a lot more ways to get around it now than there used to, because there are now ways to ignore Stone Skin. We're now getting some champions that tend to strip buffs as well. One of the ways you can protect on that is you can certainly have champions in that team that can prevent it, like having some sheep ahead of him so that they get sheeped before they get to him to strip, for example. You can certainly put sheep on him, which will help. You can put, what is it, Life Harvest? No. You can put Lightning Cage on Cupidus, which will also help protect the buffs as well. So those are other options you can do. The other problem that you can have with that is you can run it into teams that can actually just snipe through Stone Skin, at which point in time Cupidus, while a fairly tanky nuker, is still a nuker, so he's not going to be super tanky. So anybody that can hit through Stone Skin should probably be able to kill him, which is definitely going to put a little bit of a downer on the team. But we'll go build that team a little bit. In fact, let me go put together a quick sample build of how I might build an Arena Stone Skin Cupidus. So here might be what I would try for a build for Stone Skin. So as you can see, we've got almost no speed here. We've got a decent amount of attack. We've got good crit damage, accuracy, just kind of incidental again, but we have the 100% crit rate as well. And I was able to actually fit 2-piece Cruel because I had some of these sets here. That's not super important, but the Cruel does bring you a little bit of ignore defense, which is a huge way to increase your damage. So fitting the extra Cruel was definitely nice. I could certainly see arguing to try to fit him in 9-piece Stone Skin if you could. I don't have a Stone Skin ring in this faction at all, so I was definitely struggling to get some of that up there. And again, you're going to compromise a little bit in this build trying to get a specific set on there, and I don't have all these things ascended and rolled up, so I could probably get a better number of stats out of this by pushing some of these ascensions up as well. But overall, here's a good Arena Cupidus. Again, good for nuking, good for other stuff. That said, other builds you could use for Cupidus. If you don't have Slayer, which, to be fair, if you're not Spender, which is perfectly fine, then you're not going to have a lot of Slayer. So you could still go with Savage or Lethal. If you happen to have some Instinct instead for some strange reason, you could go with Instinct. But otherwise, Savage and Lethal are probably your go-tos for a pure damage build. He'll still be a very good nuker. You'll still get some great stats out of him. You may not have some of the extra cool AoE stuff, but he will still hit very, very hard, ignore a lot of defense, and be viable in Arena and a lot of other areas. If you are not going for a pure damage build, or you're looking for things like wave clear, you could put him in a stun set because he's all AoEs, so the stun will certainly help, and that would work with or without a Venus. You can certainly put him in cursed set if you're looking to put some hex out there as well. You could put him in provoke set. Both of those would be good in Hydra, both with and without a Venus. With a Venus in your team and him in provoke, you're probably never going to not have provoke on the Head of Decay. So that could be very helpful as well. So he's got all kinds of good uses with all kinds of different builds. But again, you're looking for speed. Possibly, if you're not looking for a kit like this, you're looking for decent speed, you're looking for crit damage and attack, you're looking for 100% crit rate, and, you're looking for as much accuracy as appropriate for the build, whether or not you want the burns or not. So let's go take a look at some of the places I'm using mine. Now, here's my Hydra team, and a bit of a warning, I'm definitely more of an endgame player than a lot of people, so some of these numbers are going to be high, some of these teams are going to look particularly gross, and they're going to have some pretty pay-to-win champions, possibly, if you want to call that pay-to-win. But honestly, this team is not as bad as I expected to be when I looked at it. We've obviously got Cupidus here, and I've got Cupidus's flame out turned off because I never want him to be using that A1. On top of that, he doesn't need the increase. I've got his flame out turned off because I never want him using the single target because he's got the Slayer, and I want him to use the Slayer and get the much out of the Slayer as much as possible. So he doesn't do a single target. We also get increased attack from Padraig as well in this team. So we're overall covered with this stuff. He'll have his punishing partner activated because Venus is in the team. We've got Venus, which just for a quick buff, Venus brings poisons on her A1, she brings decreased defense and weaken on her A2, and she brings AoE burn on her A3. And with the partner, she has a removes all buffs and have a 50% chance of gaining an extra turn. The good news is she's actually very smart about using this, so she won't default to using her per partner unless there are buffs on the Hydra heads, which means that she then strips them off, which is absolutely great because that means that it just helps with the team quite a bit. We've got Uko here. Uko is mostly here for the block buffs, and the decreased accuracy doesn't suck. He also does the remove buffs. Now, this is not perfect because he doesn't do it against brand new heads because they have a buff, and he will not place block buffs if they have any buffs on them at all. So it's a little annoying, but it's not too bad. We also have a revive on the team as well as some increased speed. I really wish this would actually only trigger when somebody is dead. Unfortunately, it triggers all the time. It's not the worst case scenario, but it does mean if I'm autoing this team, there are several times where there will be somebody dead for quite a long time before Ugo finally picks them back up. But overall, this team runs perfectly fine on auto. We'll usually hit max turns, so it's overall pretty good. Padraig is absolutely amazing. Uko was a fusion. Venus obviously is a void pull, same with Cupidus being a regular pull. Padraig was a guaranteed champion at one point in time, and that's where I got him, and he is an amazing champion. If you're not familiar with him, he does a chance of decreasing a cooldown on active skill randomly by 2 turns. That's nice. He's got an ally attack with continuous heal and restores destroyed max HP, which is actually very helpful in this team for keeping everyone alive. And then a turn meter fill with an increased speed. So definitely nice to have this, but I like this weird spores because the ally attack means Cupidus uses his A1, which means he gets the turn meter boost, and he has a chance to double the damage. So it's just another way to leverage Cupidus's strengths in the team that you're making. And then finally, Vizix is generally who handles my provoke. She is in Relentless gear. Vizix being a free champion is great. She is great in Hydra, by the way. She gets the provokes out and hopefully leans in towards the provokes to keeping that out a little more often. This hits very hard as well. She gets this decreased speed and ally protection. The ally protection can be dangerous in Hydra because she can take a lot more damage than normal, which is why I try to have her in at least something that helps her regenerate HP. So I've got her, I think, in 2-piece Immortal in addition to the Relentless gear, and that helps her quite a bit stay alive. She still may die occasionally, but she's preventing other champions who are doing more important things from dying when she's doing that, so it's not too bad. A1's not particularly exciting for Hydra, but the decreased speed on this A2 is great for Hydra. And then finally, we got Shamail to keep the fears off. Shamail also will help boost the turn meter of Cupidus, which is nice. just because some of these critical hits will actually increase turn meter, and it tends to work on the first team as well, and keeps the fear off, does some good damage. So it gives me a couple of other champions that do damage. So Shamael and Venus help me with damage a lot. Venus, because she's got 2 AoEs, is also in Cursed Gear. So I'm getting Hex out from her as well, which is great. You could certainly put the Curse Gear on Uko instead. I think Uko's in Provoke to also try to keep the heads provoked as well. So overall, this team runs really well in Lotto. So let's take a look at the damage I have pulled off on my most recent run on this. So again, I went to the turn limit on this, and Cupidus is doing half of my 500k or 500 million damage. Venus does a lot of it too. A lot of her damage is obviously cursed, but she also brings all the burns, and she's enabling a lot of the other damage because of the decreased defense and weaken. Vizix, you can see, actually does a decent amount of damage, even though she's not built for damage. Shamael is built for some damage and definitely adds a bunch of damage to that as well. It's a fun team. It runs on auto. I honestly really never have to worry about it. At worst, this team does at least 250 million on a bad run, and it certainly does more against better affinities depending on what heads are out there. This was one of the best runs I'd actually had on auto particularly, and I think some of that's because I just bought a couple of additional upgrades through Live Arena, which by the way is a great way again to progress in Hydra. So, Cupidus can be absolutely amazing. Now, will this team work without Venus? Yes, but it's not going to be anywhere near as good because Cupidus is doing 25% more damage, so you can just cut his damage by 25%. You would certainly probably sub Lydia in for Venus to get the decreased defense and weaken, but then you're also missing out on the burns, which is adding some additional damage that Venus is doing that obviously you're no longer getting, although Cupidus brings you some burns, so you may not lose out too much. And then finally, you're no longer getting the counterattacks, and that's probably where Cupidus is stacking up another 50 million damage, maybe 75 million damage in this particular build, is he's no longer getting some of those counterattacks. You could certainly replicate that by giving him counterattack amulets, counterattack rings, things that give counterattacks in the revenge, or putting in some counterattack gear. Wouldn't be bad, and that's really not bad for any champion that you've got some of these AoE attacks with. But definitely this is one that works better with Venus than without Venus. So let's go take a look at Arena. I'll show you an Arena team on how I would leverage him and what I would do on offense versus defense. So here's how I would build a Cupidus Arena team here. I would take somebody like a Pythion. You could certainly use a Duchess as well, although Duchess's Veils actually don't help Cupidus as much as you might like. Pythion's great because he's got the resistance lead. You put him in high resistance, you make him reasonably fast. If you can get him in Stone Skin as well, that's great, and he'll stay alive. Mithrala is also great. The advantage of both of these combined is they both have a cleanse. So if something happens where you need to worry about either of these two champions, the cleanse can help, give them additional turns, keep them alive, protect them as well. Mithrala, if not, will do her increased defense, increased accuracy, and put Hex out there, so that's additional damage as well. Venus will generally do Venus things. You don't really need to program her too much. She'll try to strip buffs if stripping buffs is what she needs to do. If she's not stripping buffs, she'll throw out the decreased defense and weaken. Probably not going to throw that out. And then Cupidus in your Stone Skin is mostly there to take a bunch of punishment, hopefully while the rest of these champions kind of tank it out, and put out some damage whenever he's attacked. Now, one of the best ways to deal with this would have Venus or Mithrala in Bolster, although that's a little more dangerous now than it used to be, with Narcissus now being a thing, but that would certainly help you give survivability versus champions other than Narcissus. Narcissus is also not going to take a lot of damage from Cupidus's counterattack because he ignores counterattack damage as well. So you don't want to go into a Narcissus team. You probably don't want to go into a Georgia team, for example, because he can ignore Stone Skin, or anybody that can ignore Stone Skin. There's a couple of other champions out there that can do that. Champions that can strip certainly could be problematic for this. So a Monkey King could be a problem. An Uko could be a problem. A Madame Ceres could be a problem for this team. That's where Lightning Cage certainly helps you keep Cupidus alive. And to be fair, my Cupidus, I showed you a potential build I would do for Arena. I didn't put it on him, so I really can't demo the team. But just in looking Save that. That's fine. Just then looking here, if this team had the Cupidus for counterattack, this would actually be a pretty ideal team to deal with it. So overall, we've got somebody that does AoEs. Wyther has to do AoEs if she attacks, so that's great. And then with the speed boost that you're going to get from Arbiter, we're not really worried about anybody stripping any of our buffs. So for the most part, they're just going to be attacking. And as long as we can survive, and particularly Cupidus should be able to, in Stone Skin, survive at least one attack by half rack, if not several, he'll constantly get a bunch of counterattacks until eventually he wears down this team, whittles them down, and kills them. And hopefully Pythion is staying alive long enough to be able to revive the team if anybody dies. He's also kind of giving you some constant healing, some ignore debuffs as well. And since Cupidus is taking so few turns, the Stone Skin will last for quite a while. So that's kind of the theory for Arena. Let's talk about a couple other places too. So just looking here in the dungeons, you could certainly use him. He could be useful in Minotaur if you need some wave clear help. He can be useful in Spider for progression, especially if you get him really early. The constant AoE attacks will help nuke down all the spiders. So definitely very early on, he can be helpful for progression. But even for like level 25, if you need a burner, he provides burns in multiple different ways. So you could use him as a burner. Now that will certainly you want to build him then without a lot of damage, but it's still a viable option. Ice Golem, especially on normal, he's actually pretty solid because not only will he provide you with all the wave clear that you could need, but it'll also provide you with AoEs that can actually help deal with the minions. So he'll constantly be killing the minions. He'll be throwing burns up as well, which is a good way to deal with the Ice Golem. So it's probably not the safest strategy because nuking the Ice Golem can be problematic, but he should keep the minions down enough to where the Ice Golem's never going to get the big attack with all the ignore defense, which can be helpful. And again, in Dragon's not particularly hard in most cases, but he is great against Dragon because burns can help do extra damage against Dragon. He's going to help you on the wave clear on the AoE as well. So all kinds of cool places you can use him in the regular dungeons. Doom Tower, he's actually really good against the Eternal Dragon because the Eternal Dragon has the skill lockouts and all the AoEs. But AoEs help you kill the champions that you need to kill to get back your turns, so he can be very useful in there. He does need to be a fast nuker build for that. If he's a slow counterattack nuker, that's going to be less exciting, although again, he'll still counterattack, so it's not bad. And overall in Doom Tower, he's just great for wave clear. He can be great in a stun set for progression. He can be useful as a campaign farmer. Cupidus is an absolute beast of a champion, even if you don't have a Venus. So if you pull a Cupidus, be happy you got him. He will help you in all kinds of places. And hopefully you guys have enjoyed the video and enjoyed my thoughts on Cupidus and my thoughts on the game in general. If you'd like more videos like this and you'd like to see more of this and not miss out, hit that subscribe button, smash it if you want. I appreciate it. It is great for the support. And until the next time, hopefully I'll see you again. I'm Bront CatHerder.